And you know what? I am also going to record this so I could make a podcast out of it. Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone. We are here with Fathmat Bakayoko, an MFE graduate, 2025 of the Master in Financial Engineering. And I thought it would make sense for her to explain to the quant community and future students or even existing students, what has been approached in networking and looking for jobs, right? And she's been quite active, speaking to different people, communities, employers, but also she's been going to conferences, and she's also worked on a bunch of different projects, which she's going to tell us about. So she's been extremely active. So I guess we're going to hear from her in terms of what has been her approach. First, she'll tell us a little bit who she is, so we have an understanding of where she comes from and everything else, and her background and what she's doing, what she wants to do. Then, obviously, you know, what what networking strategy has she's done, and the type of job that she's looking for, and more importantly, what she's up to this summer. So, Fatmat, the floor is yours.
Okay. So thank you, Professor Zo, for having me on this podcast or live. I really appreciate it. And to begin with, my name is Fathmat and I'm from Côte d'Ivoire. It is a West African country and my first language is French. And I have always been drawn to math. I think the first reason was because my father used to be a math instructor, but ultimately, what really kept me engaged was seeing how mathematical model could be used to solve real world problem. Then I did an internship back in Ivory Coast as a portfolio analyst intern in an asset management firm. That really made me understand, like financial engineering, and understand that finance for me wasn't just about number. It was about building model and using data to make better decisions in a certain market. So wanting to know more about financial engineering in general, I applied to the master in financial engineering at Lehigh. And I think this was one of the best decisions that I made since during that master, I had the opportunity to work on multiple projects that really make me like quantitative finance and more of the financial engineering end. It's what really made that experience matter for me. And I would love to stay in touch with that new side of myself that I discovered through the master. And I guess what was the next question? It was more about conferences, networking strategies, and so on. So I guess, as Professor Zoro said a lot, networking is the one of the best way to get a job here in the US. So I have been going to conferences. I have also do the reach out on LinkedIn as everyone. I try to I work a lot on project to have something to say when going to the different networking events. And that's pretty much like a big overview of me and what I did for the networking, and happy to say more about it when we get to talk about it. So I think for this, I have some question for Professor Zoro too, because who is the best than him that created that professional development classes that we had in the master to tell us more about networking approach and what really work for students and what doesn't work, and for example, the quality found in successful students.
Yes, and this is where I think I want to point out that from your perspective, really, the ability to network, right? Because when you are basically going to classes every day, you sit down and somebody tells you, well, you do this and that, and you do this assignments, and I'll give you a grade, and you understand what's happening. But really, you know, when you, let's say, let's talk about one of the conference you went to, which is the one that the AI conference that you went to, right? The first one,
Yeah,
right?
I think.
So the first one. So let's take one and break it apart because you spent, when I say you, a student, spent a lot of time studying,
Mhm,
but at the end of the day, you're not, I mean, you're here to get a degree, but you're here really to get a job.
mhm,
And for you to get a job, you need to be able to get that job. First, you need to know that the job exists, right? Because if you don't know, then you're not going to get it. And second, you need to be able to apply for the job. But the strategy that I have is not so much, let's work on the ultimate CV.
no, it's certainly not that.
So talk to me about that. Why this is not working, or why it doesn't make too much sense on working on the perfect CV.
Okay, so from my experience, I think at the beginning I applied to not many compared to other. It was like 30 application, but I didn't get return. And the best return that I get was through networking. For example, going to a conference and then having a one-on-one with one person I met there, or even LinkedIn outreach. It doesn't work every day, but I have more, I don't know, return doing that than actually applying for job. So that's why I believe that crafting the perfect CV, optimizing for every job application, and so on doesn't really work. You can be lucky, but it's not the one that would 100% give you that job offer.
So when you go into the conference, tell us what you do. You go to a conference. What's your approach?
Hmm. I would say I had to craft it depending on the conference. And the more I went to conference, the more I started to optimize my approach. For the first conference that I went, the AI conference at DC, that one, it was really more like going with the flow and see how it goes there. So I approached it with genuineness, trying to talk to people around me. And I was truly excited about what they were talking about. So I think that's what worked for me for that conference since I got return from that and I got to meet exceptional and interesting people. The following conference where I tried to approach it more like I'm going to network and I'm going to get that job and so on. It was, I would say, not disappointing, but less in terms of like return than the one that I approach with
Okay, stop
genuine.
right there. This is important what you said because a lot of students, when they go to conferences, they want to go and sit at the they want to sit at the stations, right? They're going to talk about AI because that's kind of your specialty and Chat GPT. And you're right. What you're describing is when you went there the first time, it was exciting because they were talking about those topics that you liked. And believe it or not, this is an important thing to do, right? You want to make sure that you're enthused about what you're doing because it comes through to the other person, right? Then, of course, the second one, then you say, well, because if all you do is you go to all the sessions, even
Mhm,
though they technically have networking sessions, but that's kind of either at lunchtime, by the break, or at the end of the day. And if all you do is you listen to more courses, classes, which is basically that's what you do all the year long, right? For the past 2 years, that's what you did. You went to classes and you listen. You went to classes and you listen. If you do more of that, and if that person has a job, and you don't talk to that person, you will never know.
mhm.
So it looks like with the second conference, you were a little more astute and you went for the kill directly.
Yes.
So how do you approach these people? What's your approach to talk to
For
these people?
which one? The second conference?
The second conference, yes.
Oh, the second conference, it's like I see someone and I went and I do the 30-second elevator pitch where I try to basically sell myself and ask as much question as I can have to show that, oh, I understand what you are talking about and so on. But it may seem too brutal as if you are, it's like we can smell that you are here for a job. You are not here because you want to know me. or something.
Is that, does it make you uncomfortable?
Yeah, I guess I heard the podcast from Edson and he talk about the structure path and what is not structure and what we are accustomed to. And now talking to people is like a social risk to take, for example.
And you're not, and you're not being taught that, right? You're not being taught social risk. In fact, we are one of the few programs that actually have a professional development where we actually say, okay, let's, and you know what we do in that class, right? We sit around and we talk about a little bit like we're doing now, basically, you know, what works for some students and what doesn't work. Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the ability to say, okay, so this is how you network, right? This is how you, because I don't know who you're going to meet, right? Because there's one thing to say somebody's talking to someone else about something very intense, right? And then you show up in the middle. Hi, it's me, Fatma. I wanna let you know. Excuse, I'm talking here. No, but I just want to let you know that I wanna break your conversation because
Which
I, because I'm looking for a job, but I can't actually say it, and I want to appear as if I'm interested. You know, it's a very difficult, although you should understand that when you go to conferences, they know. I mean, when I put up my annual conference, I mean, I know I'm putting that conference up for networking purposes. I mean, and then you could present like you did. What was your project about last year on ChatGPT,
Mhm. It was about using large language model to classify SEC filings, for
right?
example.
So
Yeah.
basically, you want to be able to predict the future based on what people are saying in the present using ChatGPT, which is a very interesting project. In fact, we went to New York and we
Mhm.
spent a few time with some hedge funds, so they were interested in that. The thing is, not everyone might be interested in this. They may be talking about right risk and insurance, you know, and so how do you break that? Did you have at some point like uncomfortable moments where you went in there and they look at you like how did that go? That moment when you do you wait for people to be alone or you
But
actually to go in when they're talking?
I mean, at some point, at first it was like going to people when they're low and talking, but in most of the conference, not the one that I went lately, but at the beginning, there were a lot of students. So you don't have the opportunity to actually stand up with someone alone. You do that 30 seconds later, you will see two other students or few other students around that person. And you kind of feel that it become uncomfortable for that person too. So you cannot really continuing it. There is, let me think about it. I, I honestly, I think lately it's like I see someone talking, and if it's a conversation that I really like and I want to get to know more, I may ask like, would you, I don't know, would you mind if I stand here? Or would you mind if I join the conversation? And if it's a serious conversation, they will say it politely and I will just go. But most of the time, they just let me enter into the conversation and listen more about what they are talking about.
So you have not ever been rejected. They say, don't bother us. We're talking.
No,
No.
yeah.
Because it's a conference and they expect you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is it
Yeah,
easier to attack them while they are together or when they're alone?
attack them.
Because it is a strategy. I mean, you need a job, right? So you're
Mhm,
not just here to listen to other people. You've been listening to people talking, and some of the stuff that they talk about may not be of interest to you because at the end of the day, now it's kind of too late to do anything new. You need to network and connect with someone. So is it
mhm,
easier to get someone when they're by themselves or when they are with someone else?
mm.
Or do you take them after they're done talking, they come off the podium and you just jump at them like everyone else?
No, like at conference, I for what work for my case, maybe it's not the same for everyone. It's like usually in conference, there is not only the speaker, there are the people sitting beside you that maybe nobody know about, but they have interesting stuff to talk about. They are working professional too, but we don't know. Like just going there with the mindset of, oh, I'm going to get to know people, maybe learn something, have the clear objective for what you are going to get eventually for the conference, and you just be genuine and talk to people. Not sure if I'm really here. It's like talk to everyone, not just talk to the speaker. And the person beside you might happen to be someone doing the exact stuff that you want to do. And you may have the best conversation by just being open and talking to people
Did
around
you
you.
find that as you're doing it, you're learning ways of doing this thing, whatever it's called? Like
Yeah.
this works and doesn't work. It's better when I do it this way than that. You're learning as you're
Mhm.
doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like networking is one of the skills that you own through practice. And the more you talk to people, the more you have an idea of what works, what doesn't work. So just throw yourself into it and talk to people.
Remember last year, or this year, we actually brought in this lady that now is at the hedge fund, and she told us that when she was in New York, right? Remember that
Hmm.
she was basically she had a job already,
Yeah.
and she
Oh,
was
I
net.
remember.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. We don't have to mention names. She was networking internally, and I said, but you have a job. I said, no, no, no. You don't understand. th- you never stop networking, technically
Hmm.
speaking. And that proved, I mean, I heard about it. I said, yeah, okay. But now she said, no, no, and I said, what did you do? Well, she basically went out and she got a couple of friends together, women in hedge funds and women in New York or whatever, so that they got to talk and talk and talk to people and network constantly, right? Not just because you have your job. Oh, I'm safe, so I don't have to do anything. No, plus she likes what she was doing and she was describing it. So because you're right, that's the only time you're going to learn to do it. Because I cannot create an exercise. I say, okay, let's mimic a networking, right?
Yeah.
Let's get two students together and you're barging in the middle. It doesn't feel natural, right? Because you never know who you're going to meet, when you're going to meet, what time of the day. Is it after food, before the food, how much time you have? There's so many things that are happening. And that is the thing that I think I'm starting to realize is that I cannot make you a
Hmm.
networker. I could bring it out of you by telling you,
Yes.
you need to go and practice. And the way you practice is you have to go and network. How did you, but how did you get to the conference, right? I didn't send you, I mean, the last one I sent you to that one in New York, that was a good one.
Hmm.
I literally got you a spot and you went there. But the other ones, how did you know that this conference existed?
Okay. So for the conference, we have a lot of resources. Like we have the Princeton conference that come yearly. We have the SQA that organize plenty of conference, and you can get like notification via email every time that they have a conference going on. We have IAQF. There is a lot of organization that actually organize conference. You just have to be connected to the newsletter so that you will have notification of when there is a conference and so on. And also the part about you cannot teach us about how to networking. Don't you remember that one time you brought a speaker that actually said that the best way to network, maybe you can bring people outside and just say, go talk to that person, try to get something from them, and so on. Like I think these are really interesting way to just force people to go outside of the comfort zone and talk to people and take that social risk as what we call.
And especially coming from the Ivory Coast, right? you also have to learn how to approach a different type of crowd, right? I mean, some of them are, I mean, they tend to be more U.S. people, right? But
Mm-hmm.
so how is it? How are speaking with a U.S. person different from what you're used to? What are,
Mm-hmm.
what do you find them? How are they different
Mm-hmm.
in their reaction?
Yeah. I would say the first one that come to my mind is like cultural differences. Of course, you have different stuff that make us laugh, different ways of living life, and different interests. But what I think on one of the workshop that you created for the Master International Engineering, we have someone from the ICAP. I think it was Office of Language or Staff. They came and talked to us about cultural differences, and it was like power level. How, for example, in the US we address people by their first name, and how in countries like Ivory Coast or France we address people by their last name. I think the word we used was low context versus high context. And yeah, that's stuff that you don't realize, but you kind of have to be aware to fine tune your approach and to get to know more people.
Right, because in the US, I guess because the US is a low context country, if you're from a high context, you tend to be more explicative and sometimes more deferral. Not everything is said; a lot of it is understood.
Mm,
And basically, if you are too, and I had the issue on one students like that when you're coming in and you want to be polite or
yeah,
you want to be
like,
respective of someone else. So you don't want to be too obtuse. You don't want to be too forward. So that's from the high context. With a low context, it appears the person is not interested or the person doesn't know, right?
mm,
So they're reading you. I mean, it's a real thing.
yeah, it's really
Because,
a big thing.
right, have you experienced that?
High context, low context. I would say kind of. It's like the moment I have been able to put word onto into it, I was already here into the program. So I guess to speak more with people of diverse background, and it's kind of made me forget about all those different contexts. But I think, for example, I think I called you Professor Patrick one time.
Yes. Well, I've
That's
seen, the first one. And in fact, somebody from India, they call me Zorro,
mhm.
right? I said, no, no, in this country, it's the other way around, right? It's
Yeah.
right. And even right now, I'm talking to a student and I realized that now, of course, all you're showing is that you're not from the US, and that's okay if you don't know how to call someone. They realize. But sometimes some people might be offended that you're now too familiar. So you cannot be too familiar, but
Hmm.
yet you cannot be too push, push back, meaning you're too you're going back too far, meaning that you're not forward enough, right?
Hmm.
So if you tell someone, "Hi, Mister Whatever," they say, "Whoa, hold on, you're too much." And then if you're
Hmm.
going and you call them by their last name without saying the Mister, they're saying, no, you're misunderstood. That's not my first name. That's my last name. Don't you know the difference between the first name and the last name? Or you
Hmm.
don't care. And you don't know. And this is why it's impossible to create a class or course with all of these things happening, right? Remember, chapter one would be what is best to talk to someone that is alone or with two people or three people. How do you
How to
address
call
these people,
someone.
right? There's so many things happening, and then of course you have to get to those people
Mm-hmm.
because they're out there doing their thing, and you need to get to them on something that's going to be of interest to you. So there's like 1,000 points of lights out there that you have to decide. While when you go into the classroom, you just have one dot, right? Take the
Mm-hmm.
assignment, take the class, come to class, do a good job, and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, but
Yeah.
all that time, you don't do any kind of practice. You're just studying, studying, studying. And then when you're done, which is that's the thing not to do, then when you're done, okay, now I'm going to look for a job because I might have my degree, right? When did you start looking? When did you just start networking? Because you graduated in May.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start all this networking and conferences and things like that?
I conferences, well, let's say networking and conferences. I started on the first semester at Lehigh. I wasn't the most active because I was like, let me try to get ready. And it was by November that I really started getting active. But yeah, from the first
November
semester,
of 24,
2023,
23. Oh,
23.
November. So you started, okay, so that's good because you started also in 2023. Because I want my students to really, as soon as they come in, boom, you got to start hitting the ground running because you have a lot of things to do. And you also
Mm-hmm.
worked on interesting stuff. So tell us a little bit some of the project that you worked on,
Okay.
the main
So
one.
yeah, I think before even starting the master, I started working on a project about ChatGPT plugin where ChatGPT was still new and we were analyzing the premium version of ChatGPT for financial analysis and stuff. And we created a wiki at the end and posted it on LinkedIn, and I think the wiki is still active. Then I work on a second project, my longest one. It was the LLM project where we were using different large language model to classify SEC filings into corporate events. It can range from share repurchase, senior personal change, business combination and restructuring, and many more. Then I work on a crypto. It was a really short project and it was a project created by Idris, I think. It was a crypto platform project. I also work on another one where we were trying to detect market manipulation in the cryptocurrency space. And I think just before finishing the master, I also was testing a trading platform that use large language models to try to create. It's like on with the chatbot, you will create directly the trading strategy without having to code. So yeah, I work on multiple projects during the master, and this is some of the stuff I'm really grateful for the master as it really helped me to own my technical skills and to have something to talk about when going to conferences. Yeah.
And what do they say when you talk about that? Do they say, oh, pff, or they say, wow, really? That's what you're working on? That's interesting.
Yeah, I would say they say, wow, really, that's what you're working on.
Yeah,
That's
because what
interesting.
you've learned, what you know, this stuff that you worked on, you work with a sponsor, corporate sponsor, and frankly, that's not part of the curriculum, right?
Yeah. It's in a lot of them, we have to go through a lot of research, try and error to try to get the right approach to go through the project. Yeah, it's definitely not part of the curriculum as it forces you to be more, I don't know, more focused on what is the issue you are trying to bring solution to. And it forces you to explore where they might need your skills and how you can actually resolve some of the limitation or issue in the current financial system.
So now that you've graduated and now that you're networking, so you need to find a job, right? So how
Mhm.
do you mentally, how do you set yourself up to not panic and keep at it until you get the job because you want to work in the US, right? You want to get a job here.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you
Okay.
strengthen
So
yourself?
for now, this summer, I will be working with two startups on internship. The first one is with Think New Vision, where we will be working on the early development of a decision platform. And the second one is with VecVis, where I will be focusing on narrative generation as well as automation and creating buy or sell signal depending on the data we are going to create with the startup. So that's what I'm going to do this summer. And I'm continuing interviewing, and I feel like my prospects are not that bad. So I don't really stress right now.
No, you shouldn't because the stuff that you're working on, of course, like I always say, you need to find the job, right? That's out there. You need to connect with that person that's going to find what you're working on. Which is interesting stuff. It's forward stuff. You know, it's very outward looking, and that's the reason why you work with those small firm venture capital as an internship, right? Because large firms really are not there yet. Okay, so, and I think and basically the opportunities are really with smaller firms as opposed to the big, large firms because everybody wants to work there anyway. And everybody's sending their resume and they have a platform, right? I put you in touch with with literally the CEO, but I can't call the CEO of Goldman Sachs and say, hey, you got to talk to Fathmat because she's really good. They have so many layers that you never get to that level, right? And if you get internship, like I spoke to a student 2 days ago, and she was saying, I got this internship at the UBS, but it's okay, but that's not what I want to do, right? But you have an internship, right? So
Mm-hmm.
is it really the good approach? Because then when you're done with that internship and you want to get another job, they're going to say, but you were doing back office before, and now you want to work on ChatGPT? Why? Right? So you
Mm-hmm.
have to hold on as much as possible working with small firms, and then, if the opportunity, you'll be the first one in line. They won't even interview for the position. They will just take you because you were there already and they've seen what you're working on, which is very important. So, any parting words for all these students out there that are coming from foreign, international, coming here and they want to work in the US? What do you tell them?
Okay. I would say before even coming to the US, you have to start searching for a job. You have to work on project and you have to be prepared for networking. That's the 30 seconds advice for them.
Well, that's a good advice because most of what they do is they come in, you accept them in January and they say, okay, I'm starting in September, so I'm gonna take the summer off. I'm gonna relax, and when I get here, and we know some of these students, they get there, then they start.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's not just going to the classes. You have to start everything, and it's so much work when you do it this way. You have to do it. You're right. You're better off starting even before you come to this country. As soon as you get your acceptance, boom. And I'm trying to get the new students joining us in the fall to start focusing on it now. The only thing is, not all of them get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that without naming names, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, but some students made some very good money, right? Good salary in this class, in this year's class.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I will tell you that that particular student worked on a bunch of projects, did not do an internship, networked like crazy for 2 years, right? And purposely wanted to work on project and purposely wanted to network and participated in competition, and you could make some serious money. So hopefully you're the next one.
Hopefully.
We shall see. We'll bring you back at the end of summer to see how you did, and definitely if you get a job, I'm going to bring you in to talk about it. Fatma, thank
Okay.
you very much for your time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Professor